Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. So any guesses on what are the top customers' concerns when they are migrating to any cloud? Just shout it out. Time, cost, security. What else? Complexity, availability, spaghetti. All right. Anybody else? Replatforming. OK, that's a good one. Cost. Protection of data. So no matter what these concerns are, ultimately, I think some of the regulated industries also worry a lot about compliance. All of the variables which you guys highlighted, ultimately, these boil down to cost and schedule overruns. That is the bottom line impact. So where are we? We are at a frontier moment where cloud and AI are converging to redefine operations. Azure leads this frontier. We are enabling organizations to innovate and operate seamlessly in this cloud-first, AI-first cloud era. This is not an incremental enhancement. This is a paradigm shift which is enabling speed and also enabling organizations to do something which they have not done before. Agentic cloud operations is at its center. It is adding intelligence and autonomy to all layers of the operations, whether it is data ops, SecOps, FinOps, IT ops, you name it. My name is Ashish. Thank you for being here. In this session, I will walk you all through how we are using the power of agentic AI to transform the migration and modernization journey to Azure. Now, in the agentic cloud, AI agents don't just assist, but they act autonomously across the entirety of the cloud lifecycle. Together, GitHub and Azure Copilot deliver agentic operations from code to cloud. With GitHub, the AI takes over repetitive or complex coding tasks, freeing up developers' bandwidth to focus more on design and innovation. It helps reduce the toil for upgrading legacy .NET and Java applications, providing contextual modernization guidance. While GitHub helps you modernize and build code, Azure Copilot helps you migrate, manage, and optimize your resources. It helps you shorten the migration timelines through intelligent planning, sizing, and automation. Some of you might have seen this in the keynote today morning. Azure Copilot also helps you troubleshoot proactively your resources, infrastructure, applications, and databases. It also helps you simplify the governance. Together, GitHub and Azure Copilot deliver the agentic operations from code to cloud. Let us take a deeper look at the migration agent in Azure Copilot. Now, you all are maybe hopefully aware of what Azure Migrate service is. It is assisting the migration and modernization journey to Azure. The migration agent is deeply integrated with the service. We are introducing early access to the agent at Ignite, and we will ramp up the availability over the coming months. The key focus on this slide is time to value. Faster, better, simpler. The agent enables going from initial discovery of your data center resources, applications, databases, and getting to ROI analysis in a matter of hours as opposed to traditionally days and weeks. It enables access to application-level decision-making in addition to the traditional resource-centric analysis, which is more common for lift and shift operations. It also enables access to conversational-style cloud environment setup, where the customer simply provides information about their high-level migration goals or describes their architectural requirements, and then the AI takes over and spits out deployable templates. These deployable templates are compliant with the Cloud Adoption Framework guidelines. This would have traditionally taken multiple teams a week or more to just get the first baseline ready. While we focus on the faster time to value, we are also investing in the underlying Azure Migrate service. It has expanded support for expanded set of Linux distros and OSS databases like PG-SQL and MySQL. The agent benefits from these underlying investments and also provides a comprehensive set of recommendations for these workloads. Let us take a look at how the migration agent comes alive for the scenario of lift and shift from VMware to Azure. Over to you, Shikhar.
So, thank you, Ashish. Hi, I'm Shikhar. Today, I'll be role-playing as a cloud architect at 𝗬𝗲. 𝗬𝗲's workloads are hosted on a VMware-powered environment. However, they face a challenge. They're up for license renewal. Their licenses are expiring, and I need to quickly find a way to move my workloads and application from on-premises to Azure. I use the Azure Copilot migration agent for this task. As you can see, it initially recommends that I modernize my applications as I move. However, I'm pressed for time, and I get back, I give the same intent back to it, and then it comes back with a new recommendation that I quickly rehost using the lift and shift approach. Once I lock the approach in, that I want to lift and shift so that I can migrate quickly, it provides me with a series of steps that I can follow, starting with discovery. Now here it is very important that in the initial planning phases, I'm not able to connect my estate with Azure. Hence, I use the new Azure Migrate collector to discover my workloads running in the VMware estate. It quickly guides me through the process, things that I need to take care. I'm able to quickly collect my data, and I subsequently upload the inventory. Once the inventory is uploaded, it tells me that I have discovered over 45 workloads across data, web, and infra combined in my estate. Now, before I proceed ahead, I need to greenlight this project with my leadership. And for that, I work with the agent to create a business case. Because to greenlight, I need cost estimate as well as ROI analysis, right? What benefits my organization stands to gain as we move to Azure. From the business case, it is evident that I stand to gain over $90,000 over a course of 3 years through this endeavor. Money that can be invested back for R&D or any sort of initiatives that my company intends to make. And not only economically I stand to gain, from the report, I can quickly see that I can reduce the carbon emissions by over 12 metric tons through this endeavor. The leadership is elated, and they quickly greenlight this project. Now I will move to perform the technical assessment for my estate. Through the technical assessment, the Azure Copilot migration agent recommends that I lift and shift my workloads to Azure. And all of my workloads are ready for this rehosting. except 3, which need a minor change. I can also download this assessment report for offline consumption and sharing, which contains the right side SKU information for the Azure VMs that I need to migrate to. Now, before I proceed to migration, I need to first deploy a landing zone so that I can connect, secure, and govern my workloads post-migration. I use the Azure Copilot migration agent for this task. It recommends a landing zone structure, which is in line with the Azure Cloud Adoption Framework best practices. I customize the template with my inputs through a conversation again with the agent. Once the customization is completed, the agent also guides me on how to deploy this platform landing zone through GitHub Actions. And once the platform landing zone is deployed, I go back to the agent and I ask, what do I need to do next? It quickly recommends that I can use the integrated lift and shift capability of Azure Migrate to quickly move the workloads to the cloud. I exactly do the same. Thanks to the Azure Copilot migration agent, I was quickly able to rehost my applications from VMware to Azure. It guided me through the discovery process, helped me build ROI analysis to get the project green lighted, helped me assess for readiness, and then guided me through the migration process. It also helped me create a landing zone which I could deploy and govern my workloads with. Over to you, Ashish.
Thank you, Shikhar. Now, here is a testament from Western Sydney University. They were facing a tough challenge of exiting their on-prem data center resources. And they had already attempted once, which was a failed attempt to transition away from a third-party cloud provider. They were able to successfully transition away in a matter of weeks and land on Azure. This gets only better with the migration agent and compresses the timeline further from weeks into a matter of days. Now, let's switch the conversation to enterprise workloads. I have a couple of important updates to share. Starting with Oracle, Azure is the only cloud provider, except from OCI, which has full portfolio of Oracle deployed on X11M hardware. The region coverage is more than OCI and far ahead of AWS and GCP. They have 2 and 8 regions respectively as compared to our 28. So huge difference. For SAP, SAP Joule and Microsoft 365 Copilot integration enables AI-driven orchestration, workflow automation, and also seamless collaboration. So a huge benefit of getting AI readiness. The bidirectional integration between SAP BDC and Microsoft Fabric also enables zero-copy data sharing. There is absolutely no doubt that Azure is the best cloud for SAP and Oracle workloads. Now, let us switch gears and talk through the second scenario, which is modernizing applications to Azure PaaS services. This is where the better together story of migration agent and GitHub Copilot comes alive and really shines. Let us start by taking a deeper look at the GitHub Copilot. GitHub Copilot is not just a coding assistant. It is an AI transformation engine which helps you modernize your applications and databases faster, safer, and with continuous agility. As I mentioned before, it helps reduce the code refactoring effort for .NET and Java applications by up to 50%. Developers no longer need to manually toil and analyze thousands of lines of legacy code. It does that for you and suggests the best upgrade path forward, including suggesting security fixes for known security issues. It also helps you drastically reduce the amount of time it takes to containerize an application. It analyzes the application code and automatically generates the required Docker files, images, and/or Kubernetes manifests. Now, modernization is only complete when the database transformation keeps pace. GitHub Copilot also automates the ability to do schema conversion from Oracle to PG-SQL and Oracle to SQL while reducing the time and the errors through AI-driven validations. It also automatically generates the optimized deployment scripts and configuration files that seamlessly integrate with the CI/CD pipelines. So the key thing is that GitHub Copilot and Migration Agent better together. They bridge the world between IT admins, database engineers, and app developers all aligned through AI. Let us take a look. Shikhar, over to you.
Thank you once again, Ashish. So I reprise my role as a cloud architect at Java once again. However, this time I'm not bound by any licensing constraints as I was the last time. So I quickly fire up the migration agent once again, perform the ROI analysis, and get approval from my LT for a modernization preferred migration approach in this case. Now, I want to be able to identify the right migration strategy for every application in my estate. The agent recommends that I tag the workloads comprising the respective application. I pick a pilot app, in this case, Asset Manager, and I tag all its workload with application:*asset manager. The agent recommends a PaaS preferred migration approach such that the data tier is moved to Azure database for PostgreSQL flexible server, and the web tier is moved to Azure App Service. The agent also allows me to go deeper and review the readiness at a more granular level. I'll look at the web tier, and I'll try to improve the recommendation by incorporating results from GitHub Copilot assessment. For that, I'll first create a GitHub connection from Azure Migrate. Once the connection is created, I will generate a GitHub issue and loop in my development team to perform a code analysis. They use GitHub Copilot modernization extension in Visual Studio Code to perform this analysis. This analysis helps identify all the changes that need to be made in order to modernize this application to Azure App Service. Once the changes are identified, they quickly push them or update the issue that I had created using these changes. Once that is done, the changes are reflected in my assessment. This helps with keeping everyone on the same page. Migration projects are large, and it is must to build confidence that we keep everyone from IT to the DB admins to the developers on the same page. As you can see, at a high level, the code changes are updated here along with the effort that it would take to modernize the application. Subsequently, the development team continues to use the GitHub Copilot to make the required code changes. Once the changes are done, they proceed to deploy the application. Here you can see the resources which comprise the application. Now, as Ashish mentioned, this was possible by Azure Copilot Migration Agent working in tandem with GitHub Copilot. It helped Java to modernize its application in no time. Back to you, Ashish.
Thank you, Shikhar. And this is how we are changing the game in the migration and modernization journey, and looking forward to having all of your workloads on Azure. This is one of the statements from Ford China on how they leverage the power of agentic AI tools to significantly cut down the migration effort to modernize their applications. Now, one of the key motivators for modernization is adoption of AI. That is what is triggering the companies to do the modernization. With this, our focus evolves from infrastructure readiness to AI readiness for the applications. Let us start with AKS. Azure Kubernetes Service is already the foundation for modern scalable workloads. With automatic patching, scaling, and repair, organizations don't need to worry about manual operations, day-to-day operations. They are just taken care of. AKS also has support for GPU-enabled nodes and cost-optimized bin packing. This makes it ideal for running inferencing workloads and also containerized AI workloads. Moving on to Azure App Service, Azure App Service now makes it easy for developers to integrate LLMs and semantic search directly into their existing applications. So that way, they can modernize their applications and enable them in one go. Moving from application layer to the database layer, SQL Server 2025 engine now enables support for vector search and in-database AI integration. This is bridging the world of relational databases to modern AI use cases. For PG-SQL, we have now support for moving large enterprise workloads to Azure with minimum to zero downtime and disruption. PG-SQL is already the backbone for AI innovation. It now has support for Azure AI extension via GraphRag. What this means is that the semantic search and LLM retrieval is built in. In summary, migration moves your workloads to cloud. Modernization optimizes the applications and databases for scale and maximum cloud benefit. And AI acceleration enables intelligence in every layer of your application. In addition to the agentic tools, Microsoft also provides access to trusted experts via the Azure Accelerate program. You receive support for all your migration and modernization scenarios, whether you are migrating Windows and SQL Server, Linux and OSS databases, or enterprise business applications like SAP or Oracle. When customers leverage this offering, they can take advantage of many benefits. The first one, as I mentioned, is zero-cost access to trusted experts, not only in the initial phases, but also the execution of your migration plans. It unlocks Microsoft investments like Azure credits to lower your initial project costs. It gives you access to free Azure Sandbox environment to design and validate your new ideas, and also access to trusted experts to support your hackathons. You also get access to on-demand content and customized trainings for upskilling of your internal teams. Let us double-click on the access to trusted experts in the analysis phase. The solution assessment experts help you inventory the data center resources, including infrastructure, applications, databases, and their interdependencies. They use this information to prepare an ROI case which is customized to your migration goals, whether it is lift and shift or adoption of PaaS services, re-platform, refactor, whatever it be. Based on your objectives, they also help you understand the assessment, the readiness of your workloads, how ready they are to transition to Azure, and the effort estimation required. Now, this is the information you need to decide to moving forward on the project. Once you're ready to roll, they hand it off to the Cloud Accelerate factory, which is part of the program. Those are the experts which engage to refine and actually execute on your migration plans. This differentiated hands-on delivery experience from Microsoft is zero cost, as I mentioned, which means that there is no threshold of minimums or maximums. You can iterate and migrate as many workloads as you want. The factory engagements also take care of making sure that there is knowledge transfer to your internal teams so that they are up and running on day one in Azure. If this is something which interests you, please connect with your Microsoft rep or simply visit the link at the bottom of the slide. You can also visit a breakout session, which I believe is on Thursday, where you can hear from our customers, Fiserv, that is Fiserv. They will share their experience for how they were able to leverage Azure Accelerate program to successfully transition to Azure. The code number is BRK368. Here is a case study of Thomson Reuters. Their mission-critical tax prep application was facing slow response time and uneven availability for the cloud provider they were using. They were able to successfully transition to Azure in a matter of weeks as opposed to years, in addition to migrating more than 500 plus terabytes of data to Azure. So in summary, any of you who is looking to migrate your workloads to Azure, please do so with speed and confidence by successfully leveraging our agentic AI tools and also the differentiated access to the Azure Accelerate program. Looking forward to having all of your workloads on Azure. Here are some of the additional sessions which I would recommend you attend. The last link on the slide is for signing up to early access for the migration agent. If any of you is interested, please go click on that link and sign up. If you would prefer attending hands-on lab, these are the 2 labs which we are running from 18th through 20th of November. I'll go back, give you a moment to scan all the QR codes. And these are the 2 labs. With that, we will open for questions. So there are mics in the center. So if any of you has questions, please use the mics. Is there a mic here which you can use? Or maybe shout it out. I'll just repeat it for the audience.
So there are 2 agents that you talked about. Azure Migrate agent, and then the other that you talked about is
Here's a mic for you.
the other one is the GitHub agent, right?
Yeah.
So the applications are hosted on a VM on-premises, right?
Yes.
So the agent that you're talking about from the GitHub agent, that is going to talk to the GitHub repository where my codes are stored, or it is going to talk to the VMs where my applications are hosted?
That's a good question. So specifically, the migration agent, the migration agent provides.
So, okay, he wants me to repeat the question.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, so there are 2 agents that we are talking about here. One is the Copilot agent and the other is the GitHub agent, right? And generally all the applications are hosted on a VM on-premises and maybe on the Kubernetes on-premises as well, right? So what my question is that the agents will talk to the VM or the Kubernetes where my applications are hosted, or it is directly going to talk to the repository of GitHub where my code is present, and then it will decide whether it should go on a VM in Azure, whether it should go on Azure App Services, or it can go on a Kubernetes, you know. So which is the source of the discovery of the decision?
Yeah, so let me start with the migration agent. Migration agent will work with or can work with low fidelity information if you just export your inventory, let us say using RV tools from your VMware environment, or use the offline collector, which we briefly mentioned. This does not require any onerous security privileges. And you use the offline collector to simply aggregate the information from your live data center. And it will use that information to synthesize the inventory and make decisions based on that inventory. You can decide to move forward based on the available information. But if you want to have further fidelity, that is the place where you connect the migration agent with the GitHub Copilot. And that is where you have to provide access to the GitHub repo. GitHub agent only works on the code. It doesn't look at the live context. The live context is passed by the migration agent to the GitHub as part of the GitHub issue. The GitHub issue is actually created by the migration agent. It doesn't need to be done manually. So all of that context, whatever is needed by the GitHub Copilot to do the further refinement, is part of the GitHub issue. And that is where the handshake happens. And the developer can use the agent mode to simply do the analysis or pipe in with their additional thoughts. A combination of that context is then passed back to the migration agent to further refine the suggested migration approaches, effort estimates, and the code changes involved. So both agents work on different pieces which complement each other.
So if I can answer your question, like if I can summarize it, what Ashish just said and sort of precisely tackle what you said. So GitHub Copilot is working on the code base. It's looking at the Git repo. The thing that is working on the discovered inventory, your virtual machines, your Kubernetes, that's actually the migration agent.
So the migration agent
yeah.
is basically looking on the infrastructure.
Yes.
The GitHub agent is looking on the code.
Not necessarily the infrastructure and the workload and the application boundaries, like multiple things. Yeah.
I mean, I understand, like,
Yeah.
you could be looking for different connections and all those.
Exactly.
But basically, all those are network and infrastructure connections.
And then it will provide the source target recommendations. Now, when you pick a target, like you want to move to app service, that is when you will engage the GitHub Copilot, GitHub Copilot agent, and identify the code changes that are needed to be able to move to Azure.
Yeah, so that's what I was saying.
Yeah.
So GitHub agent is basically your defining where my code is compatible with VM, or what changes I have to do to move it on an app service, and what other changes I have to do for the Kubernetes.
Yes.
Whereas my Migrate agent is going to decide like what is the size of the VM it would be, what are the different connections that is trying to make to different services. Okay, so
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
What if you have a customer environment that has a lot of applications and a lot of interactions between those applications and a lot of dependencies?
Yeah.
Can the agent also identify that?
Yeah, that is the direction in which we are moving. The agent is able to look at the interdependencies and the traffic in and traffic out. It depends upon the fidelity of the information it is able to capture. But yes, the intent is for us to understand the interdependencies and use that information to identify the waves of migration which need to happen.
Exactly.
So that is the complexity which we are also aiming to reduce
Great.
as part of the migration agent.
Follow-up question: how does it recognize that traffic? How does it do that technically?
So I'll like to answer your previous question as well. So just double clicking, what Ashish mentioned is what we are trying to achieve in the future with the agent. If you apply for early access, you may not get the capability, but we are bringing that capability with the Azure Migrate platform already. It's already live as of a couple of weeks back. How it pulls is it looks at netstat data.
Netstat data. Okay.
Yeah, TCP, IP, port connection processes.
Great.
Bridging everything together.
And that's the Azure Migrate agents running.
That's the Azure Migrate appliance running.
Appliance,
So the agent will consume that information. Our intent is to help you with this complexity, to auto-magically discover your applications and auto-magically create your waves. That is an intent we will achieve, I think, within the next 6 months.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Thank you.
Hi, my question is related to the Azure Migrate agent. I have two questions. The first one is it only making recommendations from a non-Azure to an Azure setup, or can it also make recommendations from moving from one Azure setup to another? I'll give you an example. We have something that is already in Azure running in a VM, but we would very much like to move it to a PaaS solution. And so will it support us in that?
Yeah, so the question is that is the migration agent only providing recommendations when moving from an on-prem environment to Azure, or does it also have the ability to provide recommendations from moving from one Azure environment to the other. Right now, where the agent is, it is providing recommendations from on-prem to the cloud. But this is an interesting conversation. We're more than happy to explore the cloud-to-cloud scenarios also.
Yeah, I have another question. Let's say, just take the same example of VM. Assuming this is an on-prem VM, many times it is running more than one type of workloads, but we are interested in moving just one of those workloads. Will we be able to define some sort of boundaries for analyzing just that workload and that workload related traffic to make recommendations for migration?
Yeah, and so that is where the application fingerprinting, what you briefly saw in the video, that if we are able to capture sufficient fidelity of information in the initial phase of this, in the coming week or a couple of weeks, you get access to manually defining those boundaries for the application. But where we want to take it in the early next year is automatic defining of those applications and recommending those boundaries to you. Yeah, please go ahead. I'll repeat the question.
Do you have the ability to define your own rules for the application to basically transform?
Do you have the ability to define your own rules for the application to be transformed? Can you elaborate on your question? What kind of rules you had in mind?
A lot of specific wrappers to a specific company that they wrote around applications that are legacy. So if it doesn't pick it up automatically, how that should be transformed, can you add their own customization?
Can you add your own custom rule for the wrappers which a specific company wrote? That's the question. What I would recommend is that you will have to write those instructions to the GitHub Copilot agent. And so that is the way forward. If you are interested in knowing more about this, there is another session specifically meant on GitHub Copilot agent. Please, I would encourage you to attend that session as well. Yeah, please.
All right. So the question is, while we're using these agents, the Migrate agent or the Copilot agent, while it's collecting all its individual information to make up a decision for migration or not, once we have all these recommendations, can we stage these migrations? Like, with all this information, I want to spin up something to test it out, make sure it works, and then pull the plug and go for it.
Yeah, I think if I understand your question correctly, what you're saying is, I may have hundreds of applications. I want to establish my iterations on what iteration I slot the application and its interdependencies. That is the place where we are moving as well, where today we are releasing the ability to manually create those waves, but where we want to go in the early next year is automatically recommending those waves to you so that you don't have to start from scratch.
Okay. But is there a way to, like, not just the interdependencies as well, just one application which I have, I want to move it, but I'm not fully confident if this all information is correct. I can only be confident once it's there and I can run some queries to it or run some process workflows and stuff. So can I stage it? That's where I was.
So the Azure Migrate platform provides this capability to test your migration before doing the actual. Yes, we have that.
Okay.
So the integrated migration capability, you can sort of test it out. The replication will still continue behind the scenes. We will not disturb it. It is a separate fork.
Sure.
And then you throw everything at it, as you were saying, and then test it out.
Okay.
Yeah.
That answers me.
Delete it and then do the.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi. Is the GitHub repo platform the only repo platform that GitHub Copilot works with, or can you have your code in ADO, for example? Or does it only need to be in GitHub? Azure DevOps.
Yeah, Azure DevOps. You know what? I will refer that question to the GitHub Copilot expert in the next session. So
Okay.
find me there. I will connect you.
Okay, and then second part of the question refers to what was asked a little bit earlier. Does the assessment tell you what sort of, say you're going to go into an app service? Does it tell you what kind of, how much workload you need in that app service based on the assessment it does of your code?
Yes. Ashish, if I can.
Yep.
Yeah. Yes, it does. It tells you the Azure Copilot migration agent and the Azure Migrate platform, both of them, give you the SKU, the right size SKU, like, what app service plan instance you need, what size, what VM size you need, what the PaaS instance size that you need, right? And at the outset, what config level changes you need to make before you migrate. Code level changes are provided by the GitHub Copilot.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hey, so to kind of continue on that last question, do the agents have any of the contextual information of the landing zone when it makes recommendations? Like, for example, let's just say that you have some Azure policies that are governing the actual type of SKUs that you're able to use in your organization, right? So when the agent is giving recommendations, does it know those factors across the landing zone to help make that recommendation?
So what we are launching with is the platform landing zone. That is the first click stop, where you can simply go with the defaults, or the agent also has the ability to customize if you want to go ahead and change the defaults. Your question also applies to the next level, which is the application level landing zone. And application landing zone, our ability to use AI for application landing zone is coming in early next year.
Awesome, thank you.
How you doing? How do you know your environment is ready for the Migrate tool itself? What are the step zeros that are baked in before you can even use this tool? Like, many things sounds awesome, but you get it to your environment, you're like, oh wait, I don't have the appropriate licenses or integrations. I can't even start at step one. Where's the starting point for people to make sure that they aren't rushing into 3 steps down the process?
Yeah, I think what we are doing is we are staging this for our customers. The simplest and maybe a somewhat low fidelity way for customers is you already are on VMware. Just use the existing RV tools to export the infrastructure level information you already have. No prep required. And that is the first and the cheapest click stop for you. The second click stop is, all right, I am somewhat committed. Now I want to take the additional step. The additional step is just use the offline collectors to collect the information and provide it to us, so no prep required. Okay. The third click stop is where it is kind of like pay for play. It is still free. Pay for play is you want the highest fidelity of information, and that is where you actually install the Azure Migrate appliance that has the ability to capture information maybe for hours or maybe for a couple of weeks, depending upon the fidelity of information which you're looking for. And that is where you have to go through a certain set of security privileges, opening up the right ports and granting the right permissions. And that is the prep which the migration agent also guides you. So this is the staged journey for our customers rather than forcing the most heaviest of the options from the get-go. So you can pick and choose depending upon the fidelity of information you're looking for. There are no licenses required. It is all free of charge.
I guess the follow-up would be, if you're unsure about the value proposition before you do the assessment and you need business buy-in to do the assessment, can you do these things pretty easily to get kind of a quick smell test ROI before, if I have all the permissions in the world, I can do whatever I want. But if it's a production system and I think I could benefit from it, how could I easily pitch that to a decision maker, without going for it?
Yeah, so that depends, as Ashish mentioned, on the fidelity of information you're looking for. If it's just to create a business case based on quick infra information, you can just use the RV tool export, right? No permissions needed. Yeah. And it's straightforward. However, if you can, if you want modernization sort of recommendations, then you need some privileges to at least identify the workloads, some extra difference of privileges. There we recommend you use Azure Migrate Collector, or you import in our schema, like the schema that the collector has the information back to us. And that you can do manually also. Like, figure out what is the payload, like, from our reference documentation, and sort of update the information. But if it's just infra, just import via RV tools will be done. You will be done very quickly. If you want workload level or sort of, touch the modernization recommendation, because comprehensive recommendations will only come through, continuous discovery, so on and so forth. But yeah, you can use Azure Migrate Collector as well. And the agent guides you through the process. So rest assured, just fire up the agent. It will tell you what to do.
Thank you.
All right. It's a close, guys. Thank you and have
It's
a
a
good
wrap.
Ignite.